Hello students, welcome to Young Cubs. Today we have a topic called the figures of speech that we're going to study. You see the part 3 out here? It is because we have already done part 1 and 2 which I have not shared, but in case if you want me to share it with you, I can definitely pass on the link. You can write in your comment section in case if you want part 1 and 2. So, come on, let's start on the journey of figures of speech part 3. So, but before that, let me just give you a recap, or just let me inform you what will you find in part 1 and part 2. So in part 1, you shall find the explanation of figures of speech such as simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, alliteration, repetition and onomatopoeia. This is in part 1. In part 2, you shall find rhetorical questions, sibilants, exclamation, idiom, rhyme, antithesis, oxymoron and pun. And in this session, we shall look at climax, anticlimax, synecdoche, transferred epithet, paradox, euphemism, apostrophe, irony, metonymy, tautology and epigram. So, here's the first one for you, which is called climax. Okay, so climax refers to a device or a way where words or phrases or clauses are arranged in an ascending order of importance. So so that the suspense, the mystery or the inquisitiveness of a reader or the audience may develop. Let's look at the example. I just came, maybe just as a visitor. I saw. Over here, I saw means I observed what's there, what's so beautiful, and I conquered. So it's in an increasing importance or increasingly important way, or it's an increase of action. Okay, let's look at the second one. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So the sentence is so re-emphasizing and so reassuring. Okay, that's what a climax does. It builds up the situation. Okay, the next one is anticlimax, exactly the opposite of climax. Anticlimax is where words, phrases or clauses are arranged in a descending order of importance, leading to a sudden shift. It's a dhadam, it's downwards, you just fall. Okay, it's a sudden shift from a significant idea to a trivial or ludicrous one. What does that mean? Here you were talking about everything so great and suddenly you ended up with nothing. That's what it shows. Let's look at example number 1. I have seen the world. I have traveled the globe, and I have just realized that I forgot my toothbrush. Oh, so you're talking about being such a great wanderer and explorer, and you're going to discover something great in the world. But what happens? You suddenly think of your toothbrush. Oh my God, what was that? Ridiculous, isn't it? He was a brilliant scientist, a Nobel Prize winner, and he just couldn't tie his shoelaces. It is so funny. Getting it? The downward shift just make the thing fall. Okay? Next, we come to synecdoche. Synecdoche. This is synecdoche? No, doche. Okay? So synecdoche is a figure of speech where a part of something is used to refer the whole thing and the whole for a part of the thing. Like, for example, take a head count of the class. Okay, I'll take the head count and you go and take the body count. No, right? Head count means individual. How many individuals are, or how many students are present in the class. We won't count the head separately, the hand separately, the thoracic area separately, right? Head count simply means the whole body. So it's a part. A part is mentioned over here, which refers to the body, the whole person, which is referred to for whole. Correct? Now, Germany won the match. Did the whole of Germany play the match? No, over here, the whole of Germany is not referred to. Here it means the German team, which is a part of Germany. Correct? If we say Barcelona won the match, every citizen or every individual of Barcelona did not go and play football on the field. Correct? It simply meant that the Barcelona team of 11 played the match. It's a Barcelona team. So part for whole. The next one in line is transferred epithet. The word epithet means adjective. So you transfer the adjective from one noun to the other. Now the noun not necessarily is mentioned in the sentence, but it is understood. Okay, so an epithet is nothing but an adjective. The adjective is transferred from its object or idea to another object or idea. Okay, which is closely associated with it. So, in the example, it was a long, weary journey. The word weary means tired or tiresome journey. Right? So, tiresome journey. Journey is a noun out here. How can a journey feel tired? How does a journey feel tired? Okay. So, let me write tired instead of tiresome. It's tired. So, the journey cannot feel tired. In fact, the person on the journey, the traveler, found the journey quite tiring, or he got tired on the journey. So the noun, okay, out here with which the word weary is associated with is the person or the traveler and not journey. Okay, so that's how the epithet is transferred from the traveler to the journey. Okay, it was a wonderful day. A day is normally consists of 24 hours. Okay, how can it's a normal day. So it's become shorter. Just because it's become shorter, it's become to 18 hours, it's become wonderful. And if it becomes 30 hours, it's not so wonderful. No, this is not what it means. The person, that person, what kind of work did he do on that particular day? It was quite joyous for him. He's achieved something, and that's the reason why the person felt wonderful. It was the person who was in a wonderful state of mind and not the journey. So the epithet or the adjective is transferred from the person, okay, to the day. The next one in line is paradox. Now, paradox means something deep, but it sounds very funny, or it may not you feel it does not have a meaning, or maybe two opposite words are just placed in it. But if you think deeply, okay, you will realize that it has a deeper meaning. It is a very logical statement or a universal fact stated very, very clearly. So this paradox is a little difficult to identify for a student who has not practiced enough. But on the other hand, if you've read a lot many statements, or if you've, these proverbs have a deeper meaning, so maybe that's when you can find out two opposite ideas having a deeper meaning than just what it tries to state superficially. So let's understand. A paradox is a figure of speech where a statement or situation seems contradictory or illogical. What are you saying? It doesn't make sense. You may feel something like that. It looks illogical, but upon closer examination reveals a hidden truth or deeper meaning. First example, you have to spend money to make money. How can you spend money and then make money? It simply means you need to invest so that you can earn more money out of it. So spending and making money out here are two contradictory or two opposite ideas. I want to make money and you're asking me to spend money? No, it's not that way. Okay, it simply means whatever. If you want to make it big, initially you will have to put in a little money. You will have to spend something to attain that level of making money, or for that money to give you returns. This is what it means. But superficially, spend and make. You may just come up saying that, ma'am, it is a perfect example of antithesis. No, delve deeper. Think a little more deeply. Our next example is, the only constant in life is change. So constant and change, two opposite ideas. You may say it's antithesis, but no, it is a perfect example of paradox. That simply means that nothing remains the same forever. You change, your thoughts change, situations change, so that change has to occur, and this change occurring after every period is going to be constantly happening. Understand, children? So this is paradox. Superficially it may make no sense, but if you delve deeper, it does. Another one in the picture, it's the beginning of the end. Beginning and end, two opposite ideas. But it simply means soon you are nearing to the end of the chapter, or the person is soon nearing up to his death or something like that, or to his downfall. Another one is, the child is the father of man. So what that simply means, whatever you learn, your basic habits or your basic traits, you learn as a child, and then lifelong as a father you go about displaying it or teaching it to the others. Okay? The next one is euphemism. Euphemism basically is something that is very offensive, too harsh, a very, very hard-hitting truth conveyed in a very, very, very subtle manner, so that it doesn't hurt the listener or the reader. Okay, so mild words or phrases used to replace one that is thought to be too harsh or offensive, or in other words, indirect way of saying something. For example, I'm going to have to let you go. That simply means you are fired, you are thrown out of the job. She passed away last year. Passed away, you may just think that somebody's passed by your lane or something like that last year. But no, passed away. Passed by is to just pass from, or just cross your area or something like that. But passed away means die. She died last year. Let you go means you have to throw the person out, you have to fire him, or you have to tell him goodbye, thank you so much, I don't need you anymore. So it's a milder way to say something is euphemism. Then we have apostrophe. Apostrophe is a direct address to the dead, to the absent, or to a personified object or idea. that means that if there is, you are talking to something which is not around you, or something which has no life, it is a non-living thing. Okay, so if for example, if you're really frustrated and you said, oh God, help me. So God is not physically present around. It is there. He's omnipresent. However, he's not around. So he's absent. Technically, yes. Okay. So, or maybe somebody's child is somewhere abroad. Okay, and you think, I wish you, oh son, I wish you were here. So he's absent right now. If somebody's mother has passed away, or somebody dear in the family has passed away, you just say, oh mom, I wish you could help me. Or, oh mom, I wish I could have your caramel custard. It was so delicious. So, something that you wish or you speak to directly as if they were around, or they were present, or they would respond to you in some way. Okay, let's look at the examples out here. Come on, trousers, you have to fit me. Oh, is the trouser even listening to you? No, it's an object. It's a non-living object. It's not going to reply. It's not going to listen to you. And it may or may not fit you. Okay, if you plead it so much. Okay, please clouds, don't rain today. Oh my God, clouds, please listen to me. Can they? Okay, so this is what is apostrophe. A direct address to the dead, absent, or a personified object or idea. Okay, the next one is irony. Irony is the opposite of what you think, a contrast between what is expected and what actually is. Okay, so irony can be of three types. Okay, one is situational irony, one is verbal irony, and the third one is dramatic irony. Let's deal with all of them one by one. So what's verbal irony? Verbal irony occurs when a character says one thing but means the other. Okay, so here's the example. His friend's hands were as soft as a rock. So it's totally opposite of what you say. So you enjoying yourself, you're having a party, and here you say that I'm missing you so much. So you are enjoying, you're having a gala time. Are you really missing the person? It's just ironical, or it's just trying to tell the person that we can enjoy without you. Okay, the hands are as soft as rock. Really? Is a rock soft? No, it is always very rough. The student was given excellent on getting a 0 in the examination. So do you understand how it is so hard hitting if you say the opposite. So if somebody spills milk, or breaks a glass, mom says, excellent, good job, and she starts clapping. It's irony. Okay, then situational irony. What does the picture over here show? So a big dog is chasing a cat. What does picture B show? The tiny little cat is now chasing the dog. The dog is fearing the cat. When you look at something, you look at a situation, and it is funny. How can this happen? So it's exactly the opposite. So that's situational irony. Okay, and the third one is dramatic irony. So if you look at the first picture, this friend out here, okay, he hears some kind of a discussion amongst his friends. He eavesdrops. Okay, and he's cooking up stories in his mind that his friends are trying to, on his birthday, they're trying to smear the cake on his face, or he's going to push the cake of his face into the cake. This is what he's thinking. And he's thinking not very pleasant. But when the actual day of his birthday arrives, see what a present he has. Maybe they've made such a big cake that, from the cake table, there's a girl which is coming up, and booing, I mean, just giving him a surprise. Maybe it's his sister, his girlfriend, or his mother, or whatever, whom he's really looking forward to meet. So it's dramatic irony. You normally see the dramatic irony in movies. It's a little difficult to see dramatic irony in writing unless you're a superb author. Okay, even the situational irony. Okay, but easiest one is verbal irony to put across. Then we have metonymy. What is metonymy, children? Metonymy is a figure of speech which refers to the substitution of the name of a thing by the name of something closely it is associated with. Read the examples. The crown will solve the problem. Really, the crown, the headgear, okay, that you're talking about will solve the problem. Is it? No. It simply means the person wearing the crown. Who wears the crown? The king. So the king will solve the problem. This is what it means here. Pen is mightier than the sword. So does it actually mean the pen? I take the pen out in a battlefield, and if I have the pen, the people with the sword will get scared of it, that they'll kill me with a pen. It's easier to kill with a pen. No. It simply means that the writer is more the person who holds the pen, the writer, the author, or maybe somebody from the whose writings or whose literature caters to 1,000 people is mightier than a soldier. Okay, a single soldier. One soldier can kill 1, 2, 5, 10 people at a time with a sword, but can affect, rather, let me not use the harsh word kill, but a pen can affect, or you get into the minds of thousands of people at one time. So it is mightier to change the whole scenario. Okay, and the last one, the late king was assassinated for the throne. The throne is nothing but the place where he sits, the royal chair. But it's not that chair. Okay, it's actually the position of being a king, the position, the standard that he holds as a king. Okay, that's what metonymy means. Okay, the bench will decide. So the word bench over here means the bench of judges. Judges are maybe deciding on there's a competition being held, and there's a panel of judges. Okay, so the panel will decide or come up with the winner. So it's not the bench or the panel. They basically mean the judges sitting on that bench. Okay, so the bench is closely associated with the judges. This is what it means. Okay, the bench will decide. So the word bench over here means the bench of judges. Judges are maybe deciding on there's a competition being held, and there's a panel of judges. Okay, so the panel will decide or come up with the winner. So it's not the bench or the panel. They basically mean the judges sitting on that bench. Okay, so the bench is closely associated with the judges. This is what it means. Tautology. Okay, tautology is a repetition of the same idea in different words. In all, I would say I can identify tautology very simply if by the fact that there may be two synonyms or two words meaning the same thing in a sentence. I am happy and gay. The word gay actually means happy or joyous. Okay, now the next one is I want to live while I'm alive. Live and alive are synonyms. I love morning sunrise. Tell me in which place, in which part of the world sunrise is in the evening? So obviously morning and sunrise mean the same. I went to see him personally. So if you've gone, okay, as a person, and if you met him, so you've met him personally, you've met him. So why the word personally? So went to see him, I went to see him. Obviously, it's personally. Today's modern technology. Today, whatever happens in current times is known as modern. And today, if it's today, it's the current period or the current time. So it's a synonym. Make a big round circle. Obviously, a circle is round. Okay, so synonyms in the same sentence give you the figure of speech. Tautology. Children, remember, tautology cannot be written in formal texts. So in case if you do your story writing or something like that, tautology is a good idea. However, if it's a non-fiction text, a letter writing, or an article, do not use tautology. Epigram. An epigram is a concise, often paradoxical, witty statement, typically memorable and applicable to a variety of situations. So epigram is something is very short to say, but it has and you can go about elaborately talking on that particular thing. Okay, so it is a very witty statement, a very intellectual statement. Okay, the examples out here are: the child is the father of the man. A man can't be too careful in the choice of his enemies. So what is the difference, ideal difference between epigram and paradox is that epigram may not or will not have antithetical ideas, opposite ideas. So if you read this one, a man can't be too careful in the choice of his enemies. Do you find any opposite idea? Any contradictory thought out here? No. Okay, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Okay, definitely the opposite of fool is wise and not angels, right? But it is a sentence which has a very deep meaning and it's very concise and apt. If it's an intelligent person, he will instantly understand what you mean. So an epigram will not have opposite ideas or controversial ideas. It is more of an advice to someone. All right, children. So for today, in this lecture, all what we've done in this session is climax, anticlimax, synecdoche, transferred epithet, paradox, euphemism, apostrophe, irony. Irony are of 3 types: metonymy, tautology, and epigram. This is all, children, from my side. Thank you and God bless you all.